Our interview this afternoon is with Clarance Huff, who was born at McDade, Texas in November of 1924. Clarance served in the United States Navy from November of 1942 until October of 1945. Highest rank attained, boatswain mate second, E5 in today's Navy. This interview is conducted at Corsicana, Texas on Thursday, March the 22nd, 2012. This interview is conducted for the Veterans History Project, the Library of Congress, and for Operation Remember in Burleson, Texas. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I'm not related to Clarance Huff. Also in the room, we have Milton Gibson, who is our videographer. And with that little intro, Clarance, if you could tell us about your time in the U.S. military during the war, sir.
Well, in November of 1942, there was 5 of us joined the Navy. We went to Houston and were sworn in November of 42. From there, we went to Great Lakes Naval Training Station, Illinois, at Green Bay, Wisconsin. We stayed there 6 weeks for basic training, came home for 16 days, went back and was sent to Norfolk, Virginia, to the amphibious forces. From there, we were sent to New York, from New York to Boston, Quincy, Mass, to pick up the LST 371. From there, we brought it back down to Norfolk, Virginia, to Little Creek, Virginia, and we did training there. From there, we went back to New York, picked up Army personnel, went from there to Bermuda, and from Bermuda we went to North Africa, and where we did more training there. We had an LCT that we launched over there at Arzu, Africa. We did some training there. The troops were picked up and all their material, and we made it to Gila, Sicily. In July the 10th, we hauled troops back and forth from Tripoli, Italy. Then September of 43, we loaded troops at Lake Bizerti, North Africa. We went to Salerno, Italy, unloaded all our troops there, and from there we went back to Tripoli and hauled troops for about 6 weeks. And from there we went, after the initial invasion there, we went to Oran, Africa, where we picked up an LCT, and from there we went to Plymouth, England, and was loaded and ready for D-Day. And then they started transferring people back to the States, and I got to come back from Scotland on the Queen Mary, where we formed crews again at Norfolk, Virginia, out at Little Creek, and from there we were sent to Seneca, Illinois. We picked up another LST, which was a 642. We came down the Ohio River, Mississippi River, to New Orleans, had some training there at Pensacola, Florida. From there, we went through the Panama Canal to San Diego, to Pearl Harbor, and there I was transferred off of the LST and was sent to the Philippines on the APA, where the APA 40, I was assigned to it, which was the USS Custer. From there, we went to invasion of Okinawa on the first day of April of 45. I stayed there for approximately 5 days or a little more and came back to Portland, Oregon, and was assigned to another ship later on. And then the war was over, and I was discharged in October of 45. I can't think what else. I don't know.
That's the story.
Yeah. That's
Okay. Okay, let's go back. You told me some things before, Clarence, when we were talking. Why did you choose the Navy, sir?
My oldest brother he had joined in the 30s, late 30s, and he was aboard the old Lexington when it was sunk in the Battle of Coral Sea. And that's one reason I joined the Navy. My brother was the first one that had ever been in the Navy. My dad was in the Army in World War I.
And when you enlisted, you were still in high school?
I was
Clarence?
still in high school, and there was 5 of us that went together, and we were all sworn in the same day in Houston, Texas. And there was 3 of us went to the Great Lakes Training Center, 2 went to San Diego, and I've never seen any of them after that until the war was over. But we all made it through the war.
So you did not get a high school diploma?
No, not until 2003.
2003?
2003.
How did you get a diploma in 2003?
Well, I understood that a law was passed that anybody that dropped out of school in World War II was able to get a diploma. And the senior class sponsored us, and there was 4 of us got it, and they made me lead the whole procession in on the football field for the graduation ceremonies.
So you were born in 24. You got your high school diploma in 03.
Yeah.
76. You were 79, and you led 3 other fellas, and all these 17 and 18-year-old kids?
I sure did.
Were you a little nervous?
Yeah, terribly.
Was the football stands all full of people, Clarence?
Both sides was full of people.
Did they make you talk?
Not out there on the field. No, on our rehearsals we did a little talking, but the students made me lead them in.
Okay. Going back to your Navy history, you went to Houston. You were sworn in at Houston.
Yeah, right.
Had you ever been away from Elgin?
No, I hadn't.
How'd you get to Houston?
On a bus from Austin.
Okay. That the first time you'd ever been on a bus to go anywhere?
Yes, there was. We were just young kids that had never been away from home.
You grew up on a farm there?
No, we grew up at a brick plant.
Okay. Your dad worked in a brick plant?
Yes.
Okay, so then, you're 17 years old?
Yes, sir.
You went to Great Lakes?
Went to Great Lakes.
Wintertime or summertime?
Wintertime. It was.
What'd you think about that, Clarence?
Well, it was about 8 or 10 foot of snow, and it stayed below 0, I think, the whole time we was up there.
Had you ever seen snow before?
Yes.
Okay.
In the 30s, we had a lot of bad weather.
Okay.
At home.
So how long did you spend at boot camp up there?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
That was about as long as they kept us. And it was moving us so fast that all we got was our shots.
Did you have any problem with the discipline or anything there when you were in boot camp, or did it?
No.
Okay.
I was too scared. Didn't know what was really going on.
You left the family in November of '42, and then you didn't see Mom and Dad until
About a year and a half later.
year and a half.
I didn't know anybody when I came back to Elgin. That's where I went to school at.
Okay. Okay, after Great Lakes, you went to Boston, I think, to pick up your
Went
first
to Norfolk first,
Norfolk. Okay.
and from there we were sent to Boston. They formed a crew, and we were sent to Boston to pick up the LST 371.
Okay. And LSTs had just hull numbers. They didn't have names. at
Had
that
no
point.
names whatever, so it was
Okay.
just a number.
So you got this ship fresh out of the yard,
Right at Bethlehem Steel.
okay, in Boston or Quincy,
Quincy,
Mass.
yeah.
Okay. You said you had some training as you went, I think, Boston,
Well,
New
we-
York, to Norfolk.
To Norfolk and then out to Little Creek, Virginia. That's where the amphibious forces was training.
Okay.
And we learned, beached the ship a time or two, lost anchor one time,
Stern anchor or
stern anchor,
stern anchor. Okay.
misjudged the distance.
You take this, I'm just thinking here a little bit, Clarence. You take a brand new ship with a brand new crew. Hardly any of you had ever been on a ship before.
Very few.
Did the officers know anything about a ship?
Not a whole lot, I don't think, because we made too many mistakes.
So you all get on this thing and you back her away from the pier and you go out Boston into the ocean and down to New York.
New York, yes.
Didn't run into anything on the way.
Every now and then we had a little steering problem. The steering mechanism would quit working, and before you get the ship stopped, we might hit another one in the New York Harbor.
You went into New York Harbor. How long were you there?
I would say about 30 days.
Oh, okay.
Man, it was cold. The Hudson River had froze over.
Wow. How'd the folks in New York treat you?
Well, they were pretty nice there in New York. We got to Norfolk, Virginia, which was a big naval base there. They didn't care too much for sailors.
They have the signs on the yards?
Yes, sir, they sure did.
What'd those signs say, Clarence?
Sailors stay off the grass.
I'd heard that story
Yeah, that's
before.
right. It was.
You keep training the crew as you go along.
Yes, sir.
So you got to the point that you could handle the ship pretty well.
Fairly well.
Okay. LCT, you put an LCT on the main deck.
Yeah,
What's an LCT?
it's a landing craft tank.
How big a boat would this be?
It's about 50 foot wide and 105 foot long.
Wow. So they put it on with a crane, I guess.
Yeah, big crane. And then when we got to Africa, we put the LST on a list, and then we launched it. Had a trigger mechanism to where you cut the cable with a sledgehammer and a cutter.
And just let
And-
that LCT slide off the
Slide
side?
off the deck.
How big? How much of a list did you have to put on that old
Oh,
LST?
it was pretty steep. I don't know what you call it, a 3 or 4% or what. I don't. But it was where you would want to walk sideways on it. Going down the deck.
You went across the Atlantic with this LCT lashed down to the main deck.
Right there.
You have anything on a tank deck?
Supplies for all the soldiers we had.
You
Some
had
trucks.
troops? Did
Oh,
you
yeah,
have
we
troops
had-
when you went across?
Yes, sir. Had troops and trucks, and I can't remember what you said, what they were, you know, but we had to below decks. We had trucks and things like that on.
Okay. Those guys get a little green on the way over?
The soldiers did, yes. Most of them stayed on the top side 24 hours a day.
Was that a smooth ride when you went across?
Not
Clarence?
too smooth, but wasn't too bad. But the ships travel at as fast as the slowest ship could travel. That's just took us 30-something days to get across.
So you went across in a convoy?
Yes, a convoy, about
Okay.
40 ships. And we had our escorts. And if at that time the engines, everything was new, and sometimes the engines just quit. And no one waited on you. You had to catch up after you got everything going.
But you went from Norfolk
Went from
to Bermuda?
And I went from Norfolk to New York, from New York to Bermuda. On the way down, we had a seam split on the starboard side, and they sent a CBs out with a welding machine and welded it up.
Wow.
And also the electrical, I don't know what control switch, it burnt up, and we had to steer it manually with the manual steering for a few days before we got there. And we had no gyro down in the stern, and we had to use the telephone from the wheelhouse down to tell you the course, how much to turn the steering rudder.
And this was all you were in a convoy with all this?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
In a convoy.
And managed not to run into anybody or have anybody
We were
run
lucky.
into you?
You're lucky. You're lucky. Because you was running in the dark. There was no lights.
Okay. You dropped this LCT in North Africa.
Do it now?
You got rid of the LCT
In North Africa. Arzoo, Africa.
Okay. And then you ran around the Med. You went back and forth.
We went back and forth. We didn't do any training. We just moved from one harbor to the other.
And you normally did this by yourself?
Oh,
Clarence?
yeah.
You were not in company?
No, we'd be by ourselves there.
That ever bother you?
Well, yeah, it scare you a little bit. We were coming from Salerno on the convoy, and early one morning, just about daylight, we had 3 generators on there, and one of them shut down. They started up the other one, and then they both shut down. It wasn't but a little bit that the 2 main engines shut down, and the convoy just kept going. Just picture them running off and leaving you. And we seen an escort ship come back and pulled us into a harbor, and they had got water in the diesel. They shut all 5 engines down.
Wow. While you're sitting out there bobbing along all by yourself, you ever think about German airplanes or submarine?
Well, submarines, not airplanes, because the airplanes was controlled at that time. Well, they just didn't have any. But the submarines, there was still a few of them out.
Had you ever seen any sign of a submarine? Or?
No, never did.
But it's still kind of lonely out there all
Yes,
by
it would. When you see everybody going off and leaving you, it does get that way.
Okay. You came back to the States. How did you get back to the States?
How did I get back? Came from Glasgow, Scotland on the Queen Mary.
Oh,
With by herself.
okay. And how many other troops were there?
Well-
Army and Navy and everybody on it?
Well, they had even civilians on there, but we stood fire watch. But I don't know how many people there were, but it wasn't about a lot of them. But they had just left New York and went brought over 20,000 troops at one time on that thing.
And then on the return ride, you got to come back.
Got
on the
to
ride
come back
from
Glasgow, Scotland,
Glasgow to New York.
to New York.
Okay.
Took 4 days.
How was the chow? Was it just strictly Navy stuff, or?
Oh, on there, yeah, but that's all you get, just strictly Navy stuff. They don't treat you any different than any of them.
It's been a number of years, Clarence, but what do you think about that Navy chow in 1942,
Well,
43?
We had a good food aboard the LST. We had a good, clean place to sleep. And we didn't worry too much because we didn't have too much sense to. We didn't have enough sense to worry.
They send you to Seneca, Illinois to pick up another brand new ship.
Yeah, the 642.
Okay. Mechanically, did this one work any better than that first one?
Oh, yes. Yes, I can't remember any kind of problem like we had before.
You were what, a bosun mate? You were a third class by then?
I was, yeah. No, I was a coxswain at that time.
Okay. You take that ship all the way down the Mississippi, into the Gulf of Mexico, do some shakedown,
Right.
and then you went across
Through the Panama
through
Canal,
the canal.
up to San Diego, and to Pearl Harbor.
Okay. You go across the Pacific by yourselves?
No, we went on an APA, and we went by ourselves.
Okay. I'm sorry, where did you pick up this APA 40, Clarence?
Down at off the coast of the Philippines.
Okay.
I don't know what island it was or what, but they took we were all replacement. They took a bunch of us down there.
You were a coxswain when you were on that APA?
No, yeah.
Did you put troops on the beach in Okinawa?
No, we unloaded them,
Okay.
but I didn't have to take the ship, LCVPs in with them. I was handling one of the boat davits.
Okay. So you were
I was
raising
dropping
and
them up
loading.
and down, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Were you single all this time?
Yes, sir.
Clarence?
I got married in May the 12th, 1945.
So you were still in the service when you got married?
Oh, yes.
Married your hometown sweetheart or something? or-
Well, no, she was from my hometown, but I was kind of young. I'd never done any dating back before I went in the service.
As a bosun mate, what'd you do all day, Clarence? Say on that first LST when you were in the Mediterranean.
Well, you have to see what they call after the deck force. I was in the deck force. You have to see after the boats, all the lines tying up, painting, anchoring. That was your job. And I was a coxswain. I had to operate the LCVPs. If we used those to go where we were tied up or anchored out, we'd go into the landings. We had to haul the Liberty parties in and take officers in to do things.
Did you ever use any of that training that you got in the Navy during the war? You ever use it as a civilian after you were out?
Yes, I did. I used to operate the boats. I fished a lot, and I could run them.
You fished commercially or
No,
just for pleasure?
Pleasure. I didn't have no problem putting them where I wanted them.
Okay. In all that time that you were in the Navy, You ever really scared, Clarence?
Yes, a couple of times. In Lake Bizerti, we had an air raid every night, and we run a board, gambling board, but it didn't have much money tied up in it. But whatever the quartermaster wrote down was the time that to set the general quarters off. Everyone who had the closest time to it won. You wouldn't have $2 or $3 or something like that. But then, when at Okinawa, the suicide planes, the first evening we hit that morning, that evening, I seen my first ones come in, and it was all just before dark. And they were running into the ships before we even knew what it was. And then we would go out at night and run around and come back in on a smoke screen the next morning. And one morning when we was coming back in to the bay, you could hear these planes. We knew what they were because they're down low. And all at once there was a clearing in the smoke screen, and this Japanese plane was headed right at us on broadside. And just all at once he turned and headed for another ship and hit the water and exploded before he hit us. That's when I was scared.
How close did this plane come to the ship you were on?
Oh, I'd say within about 100, 150 yards.
Wow. So you could see the
Oh,
pilot?
you could see the pilot in there. You betcha. We never did get orders to fire or anything.
You didn't?
No, it was too low.
Okay.
It was down just above the water and just flying.
So it would have been, you would have been afraid of shooting into other.
Into other ships, see,
Okay.
because you couldn't see them. But we could see the one in that clearing next to us.
Wow. You mentioned this pool y'all had on the lottery on
Yeah,
when
just
you were
like
gonna
you
go
play,
to GQ.
just like you playing football pool now. That's what we had.
That would lead me to another question, Clarence. You went in 1942. Do you remember how much you got as a seaman or a seaman deuce?
How much money I got?
Yeah, what'd they pay you?
$50 a month.
A month?
A month.
Okay.
That was all you could get. Then if you made a rank, you'd get a little bit more.
Did you get a little bit when you went overseas?
You had sea duty pay.
Okay.
Out of the, I believe it was 33, 34 months I spent in there, had sea duty for 30 of them, 30 months.
You're making all this money as an 18, 19-year-old kid, no place to spend it. Did you have some money in your pocket when you got out?
I had just enough to get from Houston to Elgin. That's all I had.
Enough for the bus ticket,
That was for the train ticket.
train ticket. Okay.
Train ticket out of
You went down on a bus, came
and
back on a train.
come back out of Camp Wallace.
Okay. In all that time you were in, you must have gone on the beach some places. Salerno, maybe?
Salerno and Gila was on the beaches there. We used to, the water came off so slow to the bottom till you'd have to carry a load of supplies in on the LCVP. You'd run aground, then you had to carry it all in. And but on your shoulder, it didn't make no difference what it was. You carried it in and unloaded it.
The Navy did that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I know when I went over in the Pacific, I got off ship 2 hours from the time I left Pearl Harbor till I got back to Portland, Oregon.
Well, you couldn't spend any money that way, could you?
No, you sure couldn't. But I was sending part of that money home to my folks. I forget how much it was. But you get paid maybe once every 3 or 4 months. if a paymaster happened to come by. So
Get paid in cash?
Yes, sir. But you didn't have no place to do it. You gambled it or send it home. That's about all you could do with it. Or buy, well, you had to buy all your soaps and stuff like that from the commissary we had on there.
Overall, good experience for you?
Yes. Never regret a bit of it.
Of course, it was a little different world then.
Yes, it's not as fast then, but you got your way from mom and daddy, and you was on your own. And if you had some good petty officers, they will show you what to do. It was nothing to it. You get the job done.
You ever go to a ship's reunion, Clarence?
I went to the APA 40 a few times, but they have this so far off till I just had to quit doing that.
You have any correspondence with any of those guys anymore?
No, I don't have any correspondence. Just the ones with the LST Association here that we have.
You have some people that you served with that stand out, that you really remember from all those years ago?
Well, I remember the Lieutenant Malachowski was aboard. He was in charge of the skipper of the 371. I don't remember it. And the chief boatswain mate and the first class boatswain mate. Chief boatswain mate was his name was Haratunian, and the first class was, we called him Snuffy Smith. He dipped Copenhagen snuff.
He was like the character in the funny papers back then.
Yes, sir. But those two taught the tech force what to do. They had years in the service before they ever came aboard.
Chief boatswain mate was a pretty stiff guy back then, wasn't he?
He carried a lot of weight.
Well, okay. Clarence, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk to us this afternoon. Appreciate your time in the military taking care of us.
I've tried to remember. It's kind of hard. It's been a long time ago.
Yes, sir. You bet. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.